Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. The judge instructs the jury, and closing arguments begin in the trial of accused Kenosha shooter Kyle Rittenhouse.
You will be asked to determine whether the state has established the necessary facts to justify a finding of guilty.
Our Angenette Levy is live in Wisconsin as we near verdict watch in this case. The judge reacts to a mistrial motion in the trial for the death of Ahmaud Arbery.
I'm done talking about it, Mr. Goff. I've heard the motion.
Plus, a 9-year-old boy succumbs to his injuries following the deadly Astroworld crowd surge. How a prominent civil rights attorney is seeking justice in the case. And later, from Free Britney to Britney Freed.
This is a monumental day for Britney Spears.
What's next for the famed pop star following the termination of her conservatorship? Law and Crime Daily, covering court cases from coast to coast. And welcome, everybody, to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Ross, in for Brian Buckmeyer, who's in Georgia, covering the trial of the men accused in the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. Alongside me here in New York, of course, co-host Terry Austin. And we begin tonight with news out of Wisconsin, as closing arguments begin in the contentious case of accused Kenosha shooter Kyle Rittenhouse. Rittenhouse faces 5 charges, including reckless murder and attempted murder in connection with the August 25th, 2020 shootings in Kenosha, Wisconsin. 2 men, Joseph Rosenbaum and Anthony Huber, died as a result of the shootings. Gage Grosskreutz was shot and wounded but survived. Rittenhouse's team argues the defendant was acting in self-defense that night. On Monday, Judge Bruce Schrader announced a 6th count against Rittenhouse would be dropped, a misdemeanor charge in relation to a minor possessing a weapon. The judge read jury instructions, which included lesser charges for the jury to consider. And then came closing arguments. Law and Crime's Angenette Levy was in the courtroom and joins us now from the courthouse in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Angenette?
Brian, the jury has to answer the question, did Kyle Rittenhouse act in self-defense or did he commit crimes, including murder? Kenosha County Assistant District Attorney Thomas Binger told the jurors that Rittenhouse didn't retreat when he encountered Joseph Rosenbaum and shot him. Binger played drone video and said despite telling people that night that he was an EMT, Rittenhouse ran away and did not provide aid after shooting Rosenbaum. Binger also said Rittenhouse provoked the shooting with Rosenbaum, so he can't claim self-defense, and the others who were shot were simply trying to stop Rittenhouse before he hurt more people.
The defendant comes running in and drops the fire extinguisher on the ground like this. And then raises his left hand to the gun and points. This is what we see in the video. Him putting the fire extinguisher on the ground and then raising the gun. Did Anthony Huber forfeit his life by trying to be a hero and stop an active shooter and protect others? Is that justified? Can the defendant just kill him? In this case, the crowd was right. The crowd knew the defendant had just shot someone. When they're coming after him, they know he's just shot and killed Joseph Rosenbaum. But you know, not every active shooter situation is the crowd have perfect knowledge.
And on the other side, the defense accused Binger of lying to the jury and insisted that Kyle Rittenhouse acted in self-defense.
This case is not a game. It is my client's life. We don't play fast and loose with the facts, pretending that Mr. Rosenbaum was Citizen A #1 guy. He was a bad man. He was there. He was causing trouble. He was a rioter. And my client had to deal with him that night alone.
And the final jury of 12 men and women was whittled down from 18 that were initially seated. There were initially 20, but they lost 2 of them. So that final jury will deliberate. No telling how long they will go. Brian?
Thanks, Angenette. Let's bring in co-host Terry Austin and trial attorney Bernardo Villalona. Bernardo, let me start with you. We know the judge dropped the dangerous weapon charge. Why did that happen, and what is the significance of it?
So Judge Schroeder dropped the possession of a dangerous instrument by a person that's under age 18. He did that this morning. And according to his explanation, he stated that the language in the statute is broad to the extent that he doesn't think that possession of an AR-15 was actually contemplated in the creation of that statute. Something having to deal with that it doesn't have the exact measurement of the barrel that is stated as the definition of a shotgun or a rifle. Either way, how does this affect the case? It affects the case in many ways. Inside of the courtroom, it affects the case because, number one, he may be limited, the prosecutor, to argue about Kyle Rittenhouse being under the age of 18 and walking around with an AR-15. He can't point out to the statute or the charge in that the jury is going to receive. Second, he would have faced 90 days on that misdemeanor if convicted. And I submit to you, it would have been the strongest count and the easiest count because self-defense doesn't apply. Third, because the dangerous instrument was dismissed, the enhancements that are posed by the different counts in the charges, if he were to be found guilty, will no longer apply because, for example, there was a 5-year enhancement to the sentence for reckless homicide. That will no longer apply because that part of the charge is no longer for the jury's consideration. And also, finally, the message it sends out to the world of being able to carry an AR-15, and there's not a charge for it in Wisconsin.
Right. Now, Terry, during the closing argument, the prosecution said that once Rittenhouse provoked the scene, he was the provocateur, he loses the self-defense claim. How exactly does that work?
So, Brian, under Wisconsin law, in a nutshell, if you provoke the incident, you are going to lose the privilege of self-defense. You can regain that privilege if, in good faith, you withdraw from the fight. The prosecution did a good job saying that Rittenhouse did not withdraw from that fight, so he doesn't get that self-defense again. But I think Binger failed when he made Rittenhouse look like a cold-blooded vigilante. He should have gone a little softer.
And Angenette, finally, what was it like in the courtroom during these closing arguments? What's the mood there?
You know, it's very serious, Brian. Of course, this is a murder trial, a homicide trial. But at the same time, the judge keeps it light at times, especially with the jurors, as light as you can in a case like this. And Kyle Rittenhouse seems pretty serious, but during the breaks, I can tell you there have been times when he has smiled. You know, he's an 18-year-old guy, 17 when this happened. So in a lot of ways, he's still a teenager. So he kind of looks like a kid at times when he's smiling at his attorneys and what have you. So there's a lot going on in that courtroom, especially to his mother sitting there watching as well.
Indeed. Thanks, Angenette. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, the Astroworld tragedy claims another victim as a 9-year-old boy hurt in the crowd surge succumbs to his injury. But first, we head to Georgia, where 3 men are on trial in the death of Ahmaud Arbery. Our own Brian Buckmeyer is there with the start of this week's court proceedings.
It was the video that shocked the nation. An unarmed black jogger, 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery, gunned down in broad daylight. The 3 men charged will now stand trial. For live gavel-to-gavel coverage of the trial, subscribe to Law and Crime on YouTube TV today.
And welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. Our coverage continues now in the trial of the men accused of killing Ahmaud Arbery. On Monday, Judge Timothy Walmsley put his foot down after defense attorney Kevin Goff filed motions for a mistrial related to civil rights leaders in the courtroom. Goff represents William Roddy Bryan, a defendant in the case alongside father and son Gregory and Travis McMichael. All 3 face several charges in the death of Ahmaud Arbery, including malice murder, felony murder, and aggravated assault. In February 2020 in Georgia, Travis and Gregory McMichael tailed Arbery in their pickup truck as he went for a jog. Travis McMichael eventually shot Arbery, claiming self-defense. Bryan followed along in his own pickup truck and recorded the incident in a now famous viral video. At the time of the shooting, Arbery was unarmed and jogging near his Brunswick, Georgia home. All 3 defendants face life in prison if convicted. Last week, Goff said, quote, "We don't want any more black pastors in here," after he noticed civil rights activist Reverend Al Sharpton was in the courtroom. On Monday, Goff again brought up the sentiment after Reverend Jesse Jackson was seated in the gallery.
I have said over and over and over in this trial that I am attempting to ensure that in this courtroom that the defendants receive a fair trial, and I will continue to do that. I have heard the objection. I have ruled previously on my position with regard to the gallery, and that is unchanged.
And I'm not questioning the court's ruling, but the court, I'm
done talking about it, Mr. Goff. I've heard the motion. I understand what your position is, and if it's simply just to point out that an individual is in the gallery, it has been done.
Do I understand that I'm not to do that again?
I'm telling you that the court's position has remained the court's position, and unless anyone in the gallery is disruptive or here to cause some demonstration that will distract from the presentation of evidence in this case, the court is not going to single out any particular individual or group of individual as not being allowed to be in this courtroom as a member of the public.
For more on the failed mistrial motion and the racial tension in this case, we turn to our own Brian Buckmeyer, who's on the ground in Georgia. Brian?
Day 7 of the trial for the death of Ahmaud Arbery continue with cross-examination with GBI officer Seacrest, with William Bryan's defense attorney Kevin Goff giving cross. Goff tried to get out that Bryan didn't do anything to suggest that he was a threat to Arbery, but Seacrest came back with saying Bryan yelled out, "Y'all got him? Y'all need help?" suggesting that he was in fact a threat to Arbery and that he in fact did hear those statements. Officer Seacrest also said that the reenactment was Goff's idea and that he didn't lead him even though he had trouble getting through his story. The prosecution told the court they would have 3 lay witnesses testify about the running habits of Arbery. However, when Judge Wamsley said that may open the door to other evidence the defense could present, they pulled back and only offered 1 witness. Reverend Jesse Jackson made it to court today, and his appearance did not go unnoticed. During testimony, Wanda Cooper-Jones gasped and apparently was consoled by the Reverend, which led to Goff renewing his no black pastors motion, this time for a mistrial, which was joined by the other defense attorneys, but with different wording. The judge ultimately denied the motion. At lunch, the Reverend came out and spoke with us, saying that he was here for the Ahmaud Arbery family and for justice.
So, Terry Austin, the judge denied the motion for mistrial here. Was that the right decision, do you think?
Brian, Judge Wamsley absolutely made the right decision. That motion by Kevin Goff was offensive. It was unnecessary. His language was offensive, and the apology that he made was empty. And the fact that there were other defendants who joined in that motion is also disappointing. All the judge needs to do is to ensure that there's decorum in the courtroom. He has done that. There has not been any disruptions at all whatsoever. The family has a right to bring whomever they want into that courtroom, and the judge recognized that, and he basically told Kevin Goff, listen, your motion is denied. He, in a very polite way, said, I'm not going to change this, and as long as there is decorum, this is how it's going to be. So I think Kevin Goff brought on a problem that he didn't have to.
Indeed. And Bernardo, let's talk for a second about William Roddy Bryan. He played a very different role than the other men who were accused in this case. Is there a chance perhaps he could be acquitted on all the charges?
So I believe that if the jury were to take the strict meaning of the jury instructions, because I think in terms of the intentional murder, yes, high chance likelihood that he will be acquitted. However, when you're talking about the felony murder counts, I think he has deep trouble in terms of false imprisonment because he admits already that he tried to detain him, corner him, and stop him from going where he was trying to go. So with that, all you need is a homicide, and then you got felony murder, and you're guilty on that. If anything, the case is the strongest when it comes to William Bryan.
All right. Thank you very much, Bernardo and Terry. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, pop legend Britney Spears is freed from her 13-year-long conservatorship. Plus, the Astroworld tragedy claims another victim. The latest developments on the deadly crowd surge at the famed music festival. All that and more after the break. And welcome back to the Law and Crime Daily program. The Astroworld death toll rises to 10 after a 9-year-old boy dies from injuries sustained during the Travis Scott Music Festival. All this as a prominent attorney files nearly 100 cases connected to the incident. Ezra Blount was put on life support after suffering critical injuries during the deadly crowd crush. Blount experienced swelling to the back of his brain and trauma to almost all of his organs. Blount's father said Ezra was on his shoulders when he lost consciousness due to the intense pressure and pushing from the crowd. The 9-year-old was the second victim to die while being treated for his injuries in the hospital. Meantime, civil rights attorney Ben Crump announces 98 civil lawsuits connected to the crowd surge. Crump says he's representing more than 200 victims who sustained both mental health issues and physical injuries at the festival. Bernardo, we know there were multiple civil suits coming, but what about the criminal aspects in this case? What would it take to show criminal liability?
So I don't see any criminal decisions being made until later down the line. And why do I say that? Because we're talking about an incident with multiple hundreds and hundreds of videos of the incident itself. In order to see some kind of criminal charges in here, we have to see some kind of reckless element, being that somebody acted with depraved indifference, knowing that something like this could happen, but still decided to make a decision, whether it's packing the venue the way it is, or Travis Scott telling people to run closer to him. So that's how we'll see criminal charges. The FBI is involved, so we'll see what the investigation concludes.
And Terry Austin, aside from the criminal charges, the civil case, could we expect a major settlement here to get this resolved?
I anticipate a major settlement. I mean, there are over 90 lawsuits just filed by Ben Crump alone for over 200 people, and that number will probably go up as time continues. And in addition to their physical injuries, they're claiming emotional distress. They're from all over the place, from Texas, of course, but also from Los Angeles, Florida, and New York. And I don't think there's any way, even with a large law firm, that they can manage all of those cases. So I think we're going to see major settlements.
Terry and Bernardo, thank you very much. When we come back, from Free Britney to Britney Freed, the legendary pop star Britney Spears is released from her conservatorship. What's next for the musical icon after the break? Welcome back to Law & Crime Daily. Well, after 13 long years, pop star Britney Spears is freed of her conservatorship. On Friday, a Los Angeles judge ruled in favor of the singer, citing immediate termination of the arrangement. The 39-year-old was under her father, Jamie Spears' oversight, beginning after her public breakdown in the year 2008. Under the conservatorship, Spears' father controlled her estate and person, meaning he controlled her financial decisions and health care choices. Jamie Spears remained her appointed guardian until September of 2021, when he was suspended from that conservatorship. Spears' case is especially unique in that she continued to perform and work extensively as a global celebrity amidst the conservatorship that deemed her unable to care for her own finances. On Friday, Law & Crime Network was outside the courthouse when Spears' attorney spoke to reporters.
This conservatorship was corrupted by James P. Spears. James P. Spears, as we all know, from public records, took anywhere from $3 to $4 million from the estate. He took a salary from the estate. He took a percentage of his daughter's earnings from Las Vegas and otherwise. Not only is this momentous for Britney, but she helped shine a light on not only this conservatorship, which was corrupted by her father, James P. Spears, but she helped shine a light on conservatorships and guardianships from coast to coast.
Bernardo, Britney Spears has said that criminal charges should be brought against her father. Is that realistic?
It's possible that depending on how the forensic investigation takes place, because it takes time in going through those documents. So we'll see if that does happen, but I do not see it being out of the realm of impossibility.
Wow. And Terry, Britney has also requested an accounting of her estate. Is it possible her father might have to pay back some of the money that he took from her?
Absolutely. If this accounting reveals that, in fact, he overcharged, he was overpaid, there's no question that he may have to give some of that money back. I think that's why in the very beginning, he was objecting to having to disclose all of the financials. And then ultimately, he decided he was going to drop off of the conservatorship. And many have argued that part of the reason he did that was because he did not want to open the records to this accounting. And he could be ordered to pay quite a bit of money back. As you heard there, he absolutely made a lot of money off of his daughter. And it makes you wonder why, in fact, most conservatorships have family members who are representing their individual other family members. It makes you think you should probably have a third party.
Absolutely. This shines a light on that whole issue. Well, very interesting case. Father, daughter split like that. Amazing, isn't it, Bernardo?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I could definitely see how it tears up families, too.
And Terry, as you look at this, that rancor between the two, it's just amazing to me.
It is difficult to look at that. You look at the fact that this is a father and a daughter, and you hate to think of the fact that they're not any longer going to have a relationship because of this whole issue.
All right, Terry, Bernardo, thank you very much. And thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.